I've taken a pretty extended break, but I should be back now. Instead of uploading long individual videos like I'd planned to, I think it might be better for me to just push out one bigger video giving smaller reviews for some games that I've played. So I'm going to do just that. Today's games that I want to review are Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which came out at the end of last year, River City Girls 2, which came out at the beginning of this year, and Fire Emblem Engage, which came out pretty recently. Depending on how this turns, maybe I'll make this a series whenever it's possible, but for now, let's just go right to the reviews. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet had a pretty fair amount of controversy around it. The game was visually just not very polished and kind of ugly. The performance was not great. Actually playing through the game, though, I can give you a full opinion on it. The new Pokemon are great. A lot of them have great designs, and sure, some of them are forgettable, but some of my favorite Pokemon of all time have kind of been pushed out by the newer ones. There's a reason that there's so much art of Pokemon like Tinkaton. Character designs are also great. Gym leaders all look fantastic. Turo and Sada, the professors, both look great. And the actual in-game execution, yeah, I was being honest with you guys, I think it's pretty lacking, but the ideas are there. Geographically, I also think the game does look kind of plain in some areas, but areas like Area 0 are just outright good. This has to be probably the best Pokemon area to date. If the game had actually decent to high-end graphics, I think Area 0 and the post-game would just be one of my favorite areas in Pokemon in general, and in games in general. Now, the gameplay is great all around, and it allows for some amount of freedom, but let's be honest, it's not going to give you complete freedom. Pokemon also finally has co-op. I think that's great because, honestly, I think it was always kind of like a small little dream for a lot of people, that the idea of being able to go on a Pokemon journey with friends, so it's really nice to see that they're actually pushing for that. I think maybe they were light on some features. Maybe any double battles that you can challenge with your friend would have been a good idea. But regardless, the greater freedom of allowing you to choose which route to engage with first, or how to engage with it. There's 3 different routes in the game, and they all have good and bad parts. The gym route is generic for Pokemon, it's the standard. It's pretty good though, there's really not any problem you're going to have with it. Time Pokemon are basically little bosses, and I like the idea that Arvin can help you challenge them, but I think that they felt kind of short, and then maybe made them feel a little lackluster. I think Team Star, on the other end, had the most story exposition, but that also felt the most gimmicky. Regardless, let's actually just jump to the story. And I think that, yeah, this one is probably a keeper. It's the best Pokemon story, maybe aside from Black and White, but even then, I think that you could argue which one's better. Area 0, like I said, is great. The music, the art, and the story all combine pretty damn well here. I love the idea of being able to go on a journey with like all these like different companions. You have 3 rivals throughout the game, throughout each route, and by the end of it, the Area 0, you go on a little JRPG party adventure with them, and maybe it's a little odd, but I feel like maybe this is actually what I would have wanted from a Pokemon game. I feel like having a little JRPG party with actually good characters would be pretty good. At the same time, that's probably only my wish. And I guess let's just talk about music since I didn't really talk about it. Pokemon music is almost always good. This game is generally really good with its music. I remember there's like a bug relating to the Elite Four in the Champion where it would loop the first like couple of seconds, and I actually had to deal with that, but listening to all the songs now, yeah, no, this is, I think one of my favorite Pokemons in terms of music. All in all, I'd say that I'd give Pokemon a 7 out of 10. I don't really think that I have much problems with the game. I'd probably say that my best description of Scarlet and Violet is that it's the best 7 out of 10 game I've played. Another way that I think you could describe Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is that they're stumbling closer and closer to the idea of an actually good and near perfect Pokemon game. They're definitely stumbling and making mistakes, but they're getting there. River City Girls is a pretty fun series for me. I like couch co-op games, so I liked playing beat 'em up games with my brother. I loved Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, and I love the first River City Girls. I played both of those with my brother. I played Kim, I think, in Scott Pilgrim, and I played Kyoko in the first River City, so I was excited to play the second one with my brother. This specific River City game, River City Girls 2, is continuing off of the last one, and let's just talk about it, I guess. The art is still fantastic. I don't really think there's much to argue there. This first game did well with that too. I mean, I like retro-style games, and I like the new character designs. Music's also just as good as it was in the last game. There's a bunch of songs in this game that I actually really ended up liking. Yeah, I don't really think there's much to complain about there. They're both very good, the art and the music. The gameplay, yeah, I mean, it's a great beat-em-up game. I like beat-em-up action, and this game felt very fluid. I feel like my memory of River City Girls, maybe, I don't have, like, perfect memory relating to it, but I felt like this game felt better than the first one. In terms of the actual gameplay, combos felt nice, and all the characters had distinctive playstyles. Also, I mean, the last River City Girls was a 2-player co-op game. This one's a 4-player co-op game with 6 options. Yeah, I think it's pretty nice to have. I played Kyoko and I played Ricky when I was playing the game, so yeah, I really enjoyed playing all of those characters, even though they really didn't feel particularly similar. Talking about the story, I mean, the first River City Girls was already really goofy, and this game is just as goofy as the last one. I don't really think that you should be going into this thinking about, I want an incredibly fleshed out story. But what I will say is I do have issues with the fact that the game's dialogue very clearly is like almost only made for Misako and Kyoko. And if you play as any other character, you will realize that pretty quickly. Because if you do any other character that is not those two, and you have like other characters, you'll notice that like Misako and Kyoko's dialogue is just mirrored onto other characters. Me and my brother played Ricky and Kunio, and I remember that I think Ricky literally just said the same things as Kyoko, and Kunio said the same things as Misako. And it felt really kind of bizarre to me, because my impressions of the characters were not that they were like literally mirrors of their boyfriends and girlfriends, but in the game it kind of feels like that because the dialogue is just copy pasted. I always kind of felt like Ricky would honestly be more like Misako, or Kunio would be more like Kyoko, like in the way that Ricky would be the serious one and Kunio would be the goofy one. And I don't mind if they're not like that, but it still felt very odd that these characters quite literally just had copy-pasted dialogue. And maybe this isn't story, but I felt like this is the best place I could talk about it. It did bother me quite a bit when I was playing the game, and it's probably my biggest actual issue because it takes away some replay value for the game as a whole. If the game actually had unique dialogue, I'd argue that the game would be highly replayable, but it doesn't have that. The other complaint I could have about River City Girls 2 is that the game is just kind of short. I mean, the game is great, but it is kind of short. Overall, I'd give the game about a 7.5 out of 10 if you played it alone. Man, probably an 8 out of 10 if you're playing it with friends or family. A good description of River City Girls 2 for me is that they managed to keep all the glamour of the first game, but now it's just missing some of the content that it should have had. Fire Emblem Engage just released its final DLC recently, so I mean, I guess it's a little good that I was a little late. But yeah, let's talk about this game. It's really fun. The art, I mean, really, I don't think I have a singular complaint about the art. I really like the art. I've always been a fan of, I'm not sure to pronounce her name, but I think it's Mika Picasso, the lead artist for Engage. I've always been a fan of their art. I remember when they did the art for that VTuber, not the Hololive one, but the one before that. And I liked their art ever since that moment. And then when they made a Fate character, Sei Shonaga, that character is like one of my favorite Fate characters of all time. So maybe even my favorite Fate character. So yeah, Alear is not my favorite protagonist design in Fire Emblem. Honestly, I think there's like way better like protagonist designs. I think that Robin and Byleth just look better. And even going past that to older Fire Emblem games, I think Hector is still a great character design-wise, and all these other characters kind of have a layer beat in that front. Even in terms of gameplay, I think Byleth and Robin are just more enjoyable for me to use, but that's also coming with the fact that Alear is not as broken as either of those characters. Regardless, this is kind of made up for, though, with the other character designs that this game has. Like, you have Tamara, Panette, Kagetsu, Fogato, Lapis. I mean, you could just keep on going. I think there's a lot of character designs that are just outright fantastic in this game, and I would give it a 10 out of 10 if the game was just purely art. Music? Yeah, I don't really think there's much of a thing I could say again, besides I love it. I don't really think that Fire Emblem ever misses with its music, so it's good to see that this game does not change that trend. I don't think it's as good as Three Houses music, but I still really, really like this game's music. Songs like Sandstorm are just perfect songs to like have playing in these levels. It feels good, it has energy. There's a bunch of songs that just make this game feel great. Gameplay, that is also fantastic. I think for me, this has to be the best feeling Fire Emblem game to me. I don't really remember much when I played Sacred Stones, because I did play that a little bit when I was younger, but mainly the games that I think about are Awakening and Fates and Three Houses, and Shadows of Valentia, but I don't really feel strongly about that game. Awakening and Fates were really fun for me, and I won't even lie to you guys, Three Houses does not have the best gameplay, but it's still fun because its story is very good and its gameplay isn't bad. It's just not as good as the others. But anyway, let's talk about Engage. Engage felt pretty significantly better when I was playing it personally. It feels like every character can kind of be made to work a little bit. Maybe not Vander, because like Vander's kind of in a specific Fire Emblem archetype of being an early game unit, but almost every other unit is workable, and I think that's a nice thing to have in these games. I know that people might want bad units, but like, I don't know, I feel like it's better to have workable units. And yeah, on the other hand, let's actually talk about the DLC gameplay, since I did say the DLC came out. Yeah, that sucked ass. The story is also super generic and tropey, so take that as you will. I know a lot of people in the Fire Emblem fandom talk about how they don't care about story, and I might make a video about that, but I don't fully agree with that. Regardless, the story as a whole, I feel like is like lightly mediocre. It's not like offensively bad, it's just kind of existent. But characters do have standout moments, and they do have great supports in this game. Characters like Panette and Pandreo do actually have like excellent characters in my opinion. But regardless, the game's story as a whole, overarching, is not great. I think the DLC also actually really shines specifically in its story. It's kind of like the inverse of like what the game as a whole is, because I think the gameplay for the DLC is really bad. At least because I played on harder difficulties, it just doesn't feel fun. Versus the story for the DLC is actually quite good. Some lines of the DLC just actually hit really hard, which is odd because I don't think the story actually really had much hard-hitting moments, save for like one or two, but the DLC does a pretty good job of actually having some harder-hitting moments. I'll also say one thing, because I don't really know where to slot this in, but the translations and the localization of this game are kind of iffy. I'm pretty sure that this was localized by Treehouse, which did the localization for some of the previous Fire Emblem games. And I think that some of the localization decisions are kind of unusual. I don't think that... Like, I understand forcibly removing romantic implications from stuff like Anna, because, yeah, removing romantic implications in S supports for characters like Tamara and Diamant just seem really weird. It's kind of unusual mainly because I think that it's not like they removed all of the romantic implications from all characters. Instead, they just left in some, like Alfred, Chloe, and Panette all have pretty romantic overarching S supports and epilogues, and I think that maybe is kind of odd to do. As a whole, though, I think that Engage is a great game. I'd give it an 8.5 out of 10. It's a great gameplay experience, and that really can't be overstated. If I was to describe Engage, I'd describe it like it's an amazing restaurant's pasta. Just like pasta, it's pretty basic, but the gameplay gives it the flair that it needs. It gets just the right flavor. And there it is. those are the games I've played over the last 3 months that I've wanted to review. If any of them interest you, give them a shot. They're all pretty fun games. I enjoyed all of them. I had fun with all of them. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment if you disagree or agree with anything that I said. And subscribe if you like the video. Maybe I'll do this with some manga and anime also.